Okay, I'm guessing this is on. So, um, yeah, so today's been a little bit of a challenge for me for my lived experience. I um, I ended up not getting to sleep for about 2 hours later than usual last night, and then this morning I woke up about an hour early um, and just really drowsy. And, and I noticed this kind of just this blah, this bleh that occurs in my body. Um, and in the past, I've really gotten very strongly into loops of I can't function today, I can't think, can't operate. Um, there's actually some part of me that was looking at the whole. At some point today, I'm going to do a live stream, ugh. And just feeling into the whole the whole sense of I don't want to be here. I don't want this state. Give me a different state. Ugh, ugh. Um, in the past, I would get wrapped up in a lot of worry about that. And I notice a bunch of those habits showing up here too. They feel like dead habits that sort of need to come up so that I can look at them. But there's very quickly going meta. There's a whole complicated web of experience here that I think is I find it really important to the actual nature of the challenge, and I keep wanting to zip through the whole thing. But let me go one step at a time. So I'm wanting to share a snapshot of this lived challenge. Right in the text I just wrote up, it's like, well, I guess I'm talking about this, right? Uh, when when there's this whole story of um, if I can bring in sort of this openness and this approval of all of my experience as it arises, then I remember having seen and I've experienced, but I've also been told by a bunch of people that I have come to think have reason to know what they're talking about, that process of approval can free me of the suffering that is in the discomfort. And this does an extra thing of making it a little bit more likely. Oh, let me see. There's, yeah, that's okay. There is someone's talking in the next room. Not sure how much it's picking up, but we'll play with this. Um, but in addition to it removing the suffering, it actually, in fact, helps me through it in a very important way. Um, this is, I can see why there is a need to invent the concept of karma to talk about this, and and why the law of attraction came about. I can see where people were trying to look at these principles and were trying to simplify them so that they were accessible. The actual laws are there's I'm reminded of Daniel Ingram referring to the arising and passing away, a particular pivot point in meditative development, as spiritual puberty. There's something about, well, once you sort of cross this key threshold, you sort of there's a way of talking about this stuff that is very understandable and it's very clear. And before that point, you think it's understandable and clear. Uh, so I'm not going to worry about how much how much clarity about these laws I can talk about. But anyway, that's getting off into the weeds. Um, yeah, even that motion, like this pushing away, but like anyway, there's there's this dismissal of, like, part of what happened just there is this flicker of a concern because of modeling what my audience may experience of my state and of how I'm describing things, which I think any good presenter is going to do to some significant extent. It's not just me talking into the void. There's something about how to interact, how to be connected. But then there's this extra twist, which is my own disapproval of the discomfort that I'm experiencing. I have kind of this ache and fog in my head. My mind doesn't work quite normally. Um, my body's energies feel a little sluggish. Hey Kai, it's really neat that you could join this time. Um, and I'm just feeling all this blah, but the disapproval projects into this. There's this very rapid loop of anticipating disapproval from the audience, and then I try to fix that. Right? That has nothing to do with being clear. That has to do with manipulating my audience's perception of me based on my anticipations that are muddied with my own internal judgments of my own lived experience. So, and that all comes down to this, yeah, whatever, let me just shove that away. Which, like, on the one hand, it makes sense to notice when I'm going off in the weeds and going, oh, I'm going off in the weeds. That's not helpful. Let me return to the point. But it's quite another to say, I'm going off to the weeds. Let me get back to the point. Like, what's the drama for? Well, so what I'm noticing in my lived experience, like, so I actually know ways of fixing my state. I know how. I notice even the language, that my habits of thinking about this just slide right in. Fixing the state because there's something wrong with it. There's something unpleasant about it. There's something that is really uncomfortable about having this foggy mind, about showing up on live. Actually, one of the reasons I decided to show up for this live right now is because I have an opportunity, and the part of me that is trying to get away from my present experience really didn't want to do this. So there's this sense of, oh, this is exactly what this practice is for. Carving out the things that don't make sense anymore. So I notice that there's a lot of the disapproval is coming from this image of, I know what it's like to be energized and have a clear mind and deliver well and feel in flow, and I want that. This isn't that, so I'm going to judge at it. Well, the fixes that would let me get out of this are, I could take a nap. It actually crossed my mind to take a nap instead of doing the live stream. I could have some green tea. I could do qigong, some breathing in energy movement practices. By the way, things like qigong take on a tremendously different meaning now that I'm enormously aware of exactly what the sensations are that it's doing, and I can feel what the movements are doing to my internal organs and my body's sense of stuff going on. It really transforms the sense of it of, oh, some person in China thought this was a good idea a couple thousand years ago, and a lot of people agree with that person. Maybe I'll try it and just see what happens. Versus, oh, when I breathe, and I can feel the movement. It's a completely different game. But same thing. But anyway, yeah. So, yeah. There's also sexual alchemy things that I could do. There's breathing meditation. I could go out for a run. I know how to change my energy state. The reason I'm not doing so is because when I change my energy state from this, I become fine. Why aren't I fine here? I get to this same place when I go through caffeine withdrawal. And sometimes there's this sense in plant medicine communities that are really into using things like mushrooms and ayahuasca and bufo and a whole bunch of, well, technically mushrooms are not a plant and bufo is a toad, but anyway, people who are using various substances in order to hold shamanic containers to do internal transformation. There's this tone of there are lots and lots and lots of plant allies, and they'll talk about peppermint or rosemary as also plant allies, as plant teachers. And although caffeine isn't exactly a plant teacher, it's like there's this genre having to do with caffeine can act like plant medicine, but my experience is that the gift of the caffeine teacher is actually the withdrawal. Because in the withdrawal, I get many of the same benefits that I get from grief. there's a layer of emotional honesty and depth that I often can't consciously choose to reach, even when I know it's there, when I'm not in caffeine withdrawal. But when I'm going through caffeine withdrawal, up to the point of a headache, the headache doesn't seem to help very much. But when I'm down and I'm sort of, for me, I experience it as a lot of self-doubt and wondering what's wrong with me, um, and maybe I'm mistreating my body. Maybe I'm thinking wrong. Like, is my sleep screwed up? Am I aging? And my body, my sleep system is breaking down, and and it's very hard to access the energies that inspire all of that without this kind of extra impetus, this extra boost of my body is used to caffeine in order to function at normal, and now I've taken it away, and suddenly I'm exhausted. That's not what's going on here. I've been free of caffeine for quite some time. This is just sleep disturbance. But it's drudging up all this stuff. And so for me, there's this opportunity to notice the way in which I am trying to run away from being myself. How dare I? Oh, that's the same thing. So I mentioned this thing about unconditional love and acceptance for the things that I like, the states that I like, the people I like. I don't mean this as just a matter of philosophy, although I think there's some relevant philosophy to it. This question of, well, is it really unconditional if that kind of liking switches as soon as I encounter a facet that I don't like? What about when my girlfriend is really judgmental of the fact that I am feeling bad? Because she's grumpy, because she notices I'm not in my highest form, because she notices I'm disapproving of myself. It doesn't matter. She can be doing her own thing, or she can be doing her own thing and in her own process of feeling miserable and projecting it on me, or she can be noticing that there's something going on in me and being judgmental about that. It doesn't matter. Can I feel just as approving of the experience of her judging me as I am of the experience of her being affectionate with me? That doesn't mean I don't prefer the affection. But can I be okay? Can I, in some sense, enjoy, at a meta level, enjoy all of the experience? And I notice that in these dimmer states, and in what a few years ago I would have called more of a yin state, more of a, like the grief is another one that I would call a yin state. In these states, can I be just as grateful for being here? And it's really important. This is where I find that there's a bunch of there's a dishonesty that I've encountered a number of times from hearing self-help or spiritual teachings or things like this that touch on this area. Not all of them, but some of them I've received in a way that has a dishonesty in how it occurs to me. It matters that this sucks. I'm not bypassing that. I'm not dismissing that at all. If I do, then I'm not being with it. I'm approving of something else as a distraction from how much I don't like being with kind of a foggy head and this sludgy feeling in my body. I mean, the thing about approval isn't about liking. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it feels like it's at the meta level. It's something like, I am here having an experience I hate. That's amazing. I'm reminded of my mother who, well, sometimes when, particularly towards the winter time like we're in right now, and when it's overcast, which we're not right now, when the dark clouds just coat the sky and darkened day with very few daylight hours anyway, and it's just drizzling rain and everything feels dismal and sad, Mom will sometimes look out the window and say, "What a miserable day." Right? Like, this is just what my mother is like. She's like, doop doop doop. Oh, oh, that flower's so pretty. Oh, look, and down here there's a crack in the floor. And it's just like she's not constantly happy, but she might as well be. There's just like this bounty of joy at being that just radiates from her. There's something very true about that is not opposed to the truth that some experiences are miserable or horrible, and some are wonderful, and that there's a preference, and that the preference matters. It really matters. So when I'm talking about this bit about approving of this state where I'm a little embarrassed to be seen like this. Right? I'm actually kind of amazed at how I can hear myself and I can hear how clear I am. And I'm kind of astounded, honestly. I spent much of the morning trying to write things down and trying to articulate things, and my mind is just not going to have any of it. So showing up with mental gobbledygook for a live stream, with barely a plan about what I'm going to say. But the importance of the movement for me here is in noticing that the discomfort isn't what I want, and simultaneously, like 100% recognizing this sucks. It's not the worst state in the world, but this goes in the direction of the worst state in the world, and I don't want it. And noticing that, and noticing the amazement of being stuck in a dispreference. And so 100% that, and 100% amazed and grateful. I'm experiencing this. This is possible to experience. There's just something absolutely astounding about this. Right, so holding both of those, they don't disagree. They only disagree if they feel like questions about the same thing. It's not about like the reason I'm deciding not to do anything about this state right now is because the energy from which the decision to do something about it is coming from the disapproval. Right? And the disapproval is coming from the parts of me that have not been in touch with the consciousness that can look at this and go, oh, beautiful. This is painful. Pain is amazing to be able to experience. Oh, and shame. There's shame. I can experience shame, and it's horrible. Like, so the parts of me that can't feel that cosmic approval, like those are the parts that are going, gotta fix this, gotta get away from it, maybe I can take a nap, maybe I can, maybe I'll come up with something that's awesome for people to listen to. I'll come up with something because I can dazzle people. It's like, well, okay, what's that? What's that guck? What's the muck and garbage? Like, what's going on there? That is exactly the parts that are creating the discomfort. So this is not just, oh, there's sucky stuff, but let me find a different way to enjoy it. This is an answer. This is an answer to the cause of the problem in the first place. Right? This is letting, in some sense, in some important and very, very true sense, this is letting the absolute beauty of divinity, the truth of reality, flow through me in a way that clears out the muck and garbage. But the way that it does that is with absolute delightful approval of it. It's not, oh, I've got this part of me that's doing all this automatic reacting and it's disapproving of all this. I need to get rid of it. I need to do my shadow work and clear out that crap. Guess what's talking? Right? So, like, as much as I don't enjoy experiences like this, to some extent, this feels like the emotional, energetic, spiritual version of burning muscles and sweat and effort in the gym in the process of strengthening my body. So, in being willing to recognize, oh, this too is beautiful. Oh, look, and there is this horrendous reaction in my stomach of, no, this is terrible and gotta fight this. Hey, are you actually approving of bad stuff? But don't you want good stuff? You should try to get good stuff. And just noticing, oh yeah, and there's that impulse. There's the thing that people call ego. When they're disapproving of the ego. Okay? And when I'm disapproving of the ego, what I say, oh yeah, it's my ego. Yeah, well, that's what that is. That's the experience of the muck. It's and the way that muck is bad. Like, I mean, some muck is really good. Like, I think it would be fair to use the word muck to describe sex lube. And yet, it seems to be a beautiful tool in a certain situation. Right? There's like, nothing is inherently bad. Nothing's inherently bad. But there's this habit that I carry in me of judging a bunch of it as a way of disconnecting conscious approval from the habit. And then, when I experience the habit, what I experience as the unconsciousness, almost like this necrotic tissue that is rotting in my energetic core. I look at that and I go, oh, yuck, this is terrible. Who put this here? Who allowed this here? Well, I did. I created it by not looking. Oh, how awful of me. That's more of the same. It's more of exactly the same thing. And it's beautiful. It's fascinating. How can reality forget itself? How can consciousness lose consciousness of itself? How is that even possible? And yet somehow we do it. Somehow I do it. Oh, look, here is this cringe, here is this. And I notice just in saying this and sharing this, I realize I'm repeating myself a lot. I'm trying to convey I'm trying to embody an energy, a way of holding this complex relationship so that like this is the spiritual pipe cleaner. Being willing to be with the muck. Being willing to sit with the intensity of, but what do I even do? Yeah. What do I do? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe I'll get everything wrong. Oh, there's that judgment of, oh, I might get things wrong. I thought I took care of that in Mexico. What's that doing here? Am I falling back? I'm worried about it. How wonderful and terrible. But that's why it's wonderful. That's why it's incredible. It's telling that our words for awesome and awful have exactly the same root that means full of awe, radiant with awe, awe-inspiring. So there's one other piece I want to toss in here because of this is just so vivid to how I live this. I feel like to some extent I'm saying, hey, here's Buddhism. I mean, not really. I didn't really get this from Buddhism, I don't think. This is more like when I look at reality, this is what I keep seeing. And as I dive into this, this seems to be how I can clear out the disapproval by utterly approving of the disapproval. And it adds this wonderful paradox of, oh, but look at that. Am I only approving of the disapproval in order to get rid of it? Then am I really approving of it? Look at that tangle. Just being with it and being amazed that I can experience that. Why should I be amazed? Well, I don't have to be. I can just get totally lost. That's incredible too. Although, secretly, it's not possible to stay lost forever. It really isn't. It's one of the weirdest experiences I've had. This is a little off to the side, but I want to mention a paradox that I embody that this touches on. Cool, Kai says, sounds like relatively standard Buddhism to me. Yeah, yeah. A lot of this wasn't derived from Buddhism. It was derived from just looking at what is and being with, well, how do I actually create a much more pleasant experience for myself? One of the weird aspects I discovered in the course of exploring all of this is that there is there's this actually, I think I want to set that aside for another time. There's something relating to death and questions of immortality and what any of that even means. That would be its own topic. I was about to go into that, but I think I won't right now. That's its whole own thing. But there's a different direction I do want to go in, something touching about the relationship to the mind that's particularly special to me. Oh, hello, David. It says, I see through a compound eye where the sub and super versions of me are facets of this perspective. Yeah, it definitely feels like I'm in the Western mystical traditions, especially Hermeticism. There's this whole business about the highest form of spirituality is not escaping from the world. You're not trying to escape the cycle of death and rebirth, although they didn't have reincarnation by the Renaissance Hermeticism, from what I can tell. But in any case, it's not. The idea is not to escape this world and transcend it and just unify with oneness. And it certainly isn't to reject that oneness and just operate in a mechanical way on Earth. Even if you could somehow be immortal like that, you wouldn't want to, because you're sort of casting yourself into hell forever. You wouldn't want to be immortal there. But instead, the idea is to recognize this paradoxical unity of I am an individual and I am everything as a lived thing, as an actually fully embodied thing. And some of them tried to grab the stories of Jesus Christ and say, like, this is meant to be a description of the embodiment of that. And it's unclear to me whether that's what it was originally intended to be. But that's one of the arcs there, is noticing there's this double-sidedness to it. And it's a really intense paradox. It's really quite remarkable. It's one thing to understand the paradox mentally, and it's quite another to encounter it repeatedly from both sides of that paradox. It was much stranger than I thought, a lot stranger. But I want to touch on an issue of mind that is particularly alive for me whenever I encounter states like the one that I find myself in. There's one of the big challenges I have when I slide into these dark states is that it feels like all of my transcendental tools slide away. I am so used to accessing them through my mind, but when my mind becomes unreliable, I very quickly get disoriented. So, like earlier today, I was faced with, oh, I feel so blah. I should be with the experience. When I try to do that, this isn't, like, something's missing. What's going on? Am I messing up somehow? Oh, I mean, I can feel the judgment that's in that thought. All right, maybe I just meditate. I tried sitting and breathing for a couple minutes, and it was like, okay, but I feel like I'm actually somehow making this worse. Maybe I just like wrap myself in a blanket and be nice to me. And after doing that for a little bit, it just felt like I was avoiding it, and then I felt guilt, and there's just no place to put my attention that felt like progress. And I could even recognize cognitively, oh, I'm trying to get away from this experience. So how do I not do that? But I couldn't come from a place of orienting to that question where the goal wasn't to make myself feel better. Right? So it just seemed like I had locked myself in this little box and I didn't see a way out. And, frankly, I can feel and I don't understand the solution. It's just an ongoing puzzle for me. Like I said, I can think of ways that I could just change my state and then feel better. But there's this sense of, am I missing something? Like, I'm going to keep coming back here over and over and over again, including the loss of a sense of having grounding. I know that. I'm going to keep coming back here until I find a way to orient to it that doesn't require my knowing these tools in a way that I know how to use. I've got to orient some other way. When I look at the tools, that's what they say. That's the ones that I can access tell me. And in some sense, that is the access to the tools, but it's like, okay, well, it like being given the instruction, do something different. Okay. I have now done something different. Nope, not that. Figure it out. Oh, well, great. As my father is wont to say, is there anyone else up there? I do find that there's something like a somatic or heart level trust that being in these states of not knowing is really helping to cultivate the trust in what? Something like, and now I'm remembering some conversations with a friend of mine, Ryan Thomas, who is really big into the Vipassana thing, which like still within the Buddhist umbrella clearly, about, well, all these bad states sort of arise and they pass away on their own. I mean, like, it's one thing to know that and even to experience it, but it's quite another to sort of, and he didn't say it this way at all, but this is part of how I'm living the experience. It's quite another to develop a somatic and emotional trust that that's how it works, and that because of that, there isn't anything that I can know at a level that affects how my emotions move, how my triggers move or don't, what fuels my mind. I can just know, oh, I don't have to monkey with this. There's nothing wrong. This is just where I am right now. But the transition sucks and that matters. I guess spent the first half of today feeling bad and not really having a clear sense of, okay, isn't it wonderful that I can feel bad? No, it's just like I'm supposed to feel like this is wonderful that I can feel bad. Yeah, I suck at that too. Ugh. It's like those thoughts anti-help. But there seems to be something really important for me about living each of those iterations of noticing, yeah, the mind can't do that. Which means that that thought can't answer the challenge here. So here I am. And then I find just being willing to show up and to just say, yep, I'm going to 100% be with it. Like, there's a way where I can actually feel a bunch of the cloud clearing off of me in the course of talking about it in this live stream, which is not at all surprising. I find, same experience I have when coming out of some sort of plant medicine. There's an experience of wanting to land and then go, it's all love. And then this thought flashes through my head, God damn it. That is the right words, and this is so stereotypical because it doesn't convey what the thing actually is. Like, oh, great, I can communicate with people who already know. So I notice myself with this tone of, oh yeah, just be with the feeling. Yeah, but the part that's missing is something like all the places where that's hard. There's something like, yeah, that sucks. So I find myself living this a lot more, just in an ongoing way. And then the choice to orient to this today instead of trying to get away from it, including being with the parts that are trying to get away from it. It feels like a significantly different tone, or like something, or maybe a different way to say this is some really key part of me managed to, in an IFS sense, in an internal family system sense, managed to sort of switch sides. And is now going, you know what, integration actually makes a lot of sense. I'm not quite sure what it is. I just know that the lived experience is that I in practice don't get trapped by my mind nearly as much anymore. And when I do, it no longer feels nearly as much like it's going in the direction of strengthening the mind trap. It feels tremendously more like it is examining the structure of the mind trap and then breaking it down from its power source. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now and what I've been wrestling with today. And therefore, that's what it made sense to show up with. So, oh yeah, that's right. Sometimes it scrolls down. Okay, there are no more. Cool. And there was that flash again. Oh, I might be missing something. This machine is crazy. Okay, so, and now a comment appears. Cool. I was about to close up, but I'll take a look at this. David Swidla says, that yuck feel for me happens with the master me wants to vote some of those squeakier selves off the island, and the experience shifts when I listen deeply to them. Yeah. I feel like there's a really important question, and this is part of an edge for me that I still don't know how to orient to. My mind is really good at seeing the whole game theory picture, and that doesn't necessarily mean I'm completely right, but it definitely goes in the direction of, oh, well, like, let me find out what's right. Let me create the actual model of how the system works. But it's doing it from a perspective that isn't always lived from me, which makes it a little distant in a particular way. And then there's the me perspective, which keeps coming back to, oh, I need to focus on my growth. I can't fix the world. That's not my job. The best, like I can look at the game theory, and best as I can tell, it looks to me like if I stop trying to fix the world and I actually just do my work, that does the fix the world thing. I just can't do it for that reason, because then it muddies up my own success at my self-work and also, therefore, at the ability to do good things for the world. So there's like this strange loop that has me adjusting back. But there's still a thing sitting in my mind about, I can see the game board, and I can see that there are places that we collectively need to move to. And I don't mean this as a pressure statement in this case. This is more like a description. I'm describing parameters, like an engineer says, look, you need to put a pole there or the building is going to collapse. I'm looking at, we need to have more of a collective understanding and capacity to teach meaningful things clearly in order for our species to be in a more conscious state in a stable way. So we've got to get there somehow. I see some pathways that are possible. But one example is, how do we listen deeply when we can't seem to notice a way to do so? Right? How, like when I am really activated in my in a conversation with someone, like with my partner, and like the activation has a whole lot of, I'm not safe, and here's this story about why things are bad. And in one sense, yeah, that moment can be used to clear out whatever the triggering influence was in the first place, and that's actually just part of the process. But it can also feed into creating more of the trigger by rehearsing the story. So being able to really alchemize that experience into a transformation so that it's a clearing out and an aligning and something that brings these squeakier selves, as you say, David, that brings those home and sort of like has them listen deeply so that their resources can play a supporting role in the whole system. Like, I can understand that. But when I'm triggered, she's wrong. Or I'm being judged and that's not okay. And I'm just stuck there. Like, what do? Being told, just accept yourself. Like, there's a gap. Like, I don't claim that this video, and what I've said in this video is a teaching video for this. This is just me showing up saying, this is what I'm experiencing. This is how I'm encountering this. There's a hope that glimmers in the back of my mind about, hey, maybe me embodying this and showing up and describing it can be helpful to somebody in a way that they somatically get and allows them to do a little bit more. But it's not planned. It's not, and it doesn't, it's not, I'm not saying that the species needs to have this planned in order to develop a stable point, but there needs to be some kind of clear thing that, that when, when nations actually believe that their only answer is to go to war, something very wrong has happened in the whole reasoning process, probably. Ha. Aha. Aha. I think what I said is true, but twisted. I think I see it. I think I see it. It's something like, yeah, I don't know. There's this like game that this edge here that I'm playing with, just like getting to watch me juggle this in real time. This feeling of like toddlers have to throw temper tantrums. That's part of their process of growing up to be able to not kill people. And if they do grow up without that getting processed, then that means that they sort of need to try to kill people in order to align with that whole thing. So it's something like war is what this process looks like at the current stage, and it's not that something has gone wrong, it's that we're not at the stage where it makes sense not to do that. It's just that there's a strange loop in there, and I say this using Hofstadter's use of strange loop, a self-referential loop, that will be at that maturity stage when we decide to be. So in that sense, something went wrong, but what's going on there when I say something's gone wrong is that I'm busy projecting my disapproval of my own experience on the environment, which means that I'm not showing up to clearly see how to bring kindness into the situation because I'm actually projecting my unkindness to myself onto the world. So, yeah, I'll probably have a few more cycles of thinking about that before I'm satisfied with it. But I'm noticing, that we just caught a glitch there. I see Daniel Blanc says, hence wise knowing. True, useful ideas are complex and thus lose wars against simpler, easily transmitted ideas, even if the latter is false. More typically, they mutate to a simplified false form. Theme park versions, yeah. That I think that is a fantastic summary of August, of all the things I was saying in August. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it seems to me like one way to summarize the vision of wise knowing in this kind of spirit is to try to answer the question, what kind of way of being or what kind of meme structure would encourage true useful ideas that are complex above the simpler, catchy ones that are false and just meant to capture attention. Okay? And what I'm coming to is a recognition that I had a bunch of these pieces in August when I was talking about switching mimetic operating systems and this transforming the sense of self. But as I internalize that work more, what I find is what I think that is lived as is the experience of deeply prioritizing truth, somatic truth, lived truth, not just logically correct statements that sound good to the mind, because the mind can be fooled, but reality can't. So there's this matter of aligning with truth for myself. If I do that, I notice I can more fully embody the way of being that makes me more immune to these mind-eating demons. And I think, and this is where there's a question mark, and this is part of the interface between my personal work and my ability to model the world. There's like a fuzz point there that I don't quite get yet. But I think there may be a way to embody and offer this in a way that encourages the lighting up, in a way that doesn't require everybody to independently invent this because of their own process. I suspect that, approximately speaking, the entire arc of spirituality has been working on this since the dawn of spirituality in humans. But I think that we're almost at the point where we can have a scientific revolution of the spirit. And that's a lot of what wise knowing is about, in my view. David says, my expectations don't match the is, and the is must be wrong. Yes, of course. And then Kai adds, are you embodying this and that, maybe being useful? For what it's worth, I've been listening to you while sitting with an anxiety, and now it has transformed into a pretty intense physical heat, which is nice. I don't know whether your energy contributed to that, but it probably didn't hurt either. Cool. Thanks for the feedback. Okay. Yeah, I feel complete. So I'm going to close this. Thank you for listening to Daniel Blanc, David Swedlau, Kai. It was great to get to interact with you here. Yeah, and I'll be back on tomorrow.